Well, in our special focus today, we're looking at food security, and one of the threats and one of the consequences, of course, of the war in Ukraine has been rising food prices for some time now. The latest data suggests that food inflation remains elevated at 8.2%. The biggest rates of increases were recorded in the sugar and sweets category as well as vegetables. Well, overall, consumer inflation rose slightly to 4.8% in August, slightly up from 4.7 recorded last month. Food, non-alcoholic beverages and housing and utilities all played a role in that slight increase. The consumer inflation remains within the Reserve Bank's target band of between 3 and 6%, though, and we've seen that for 3 consecutive months. So that is the good news. Economists say this could provide some room for the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee to keep rates unchanged when it announces its decision tomorrow. All right, let's discuss now. We bring in independent economist Elize Kruger looking at the latest data. So if there was any room for doubt, Elize, definitely no interest rate hike tomorrow. Can we sleep soundly on that tonight?
Yes, Francis, I do believe so. I think, today's number has been in line with expectations, but actually the number that came out for July last month was quite a bit lower than expected, the 4.7, and also lower than what the Reserve Bank had in their forecast. So as a minimum, I expect them to at least, acknowledge that the last couple of months we saw inflation coming in below expectations. However, I do think it will be and sort of a difficult meeting in a sense, because as we sit here now, we already had a hectic fuel price increase at the beginning of September, and there will be another further hectic increase at the beginning of October. And that, unfortunately, will turn this current very positive scenario around, a short sort of U-turn, with headline inflation easily going to print about 5.5% at next month for the month of September.
Does that mean we can't rule out interest rate hikes in future? Is that where we're at?
Francis, I think that there will be some members in the committee that will most probably tomorrow be very concerned about the current scenario on fuel prices. So it's not impossible to have maybe one or two committee members voting for a further 25 basis point hike. But I firmly believe that the consensus of the committee will be a no change, i.e. interest rates remaining at the current level, most probably for a prolonged period. I also do not see any quick decline or drop in interest rates given this scenario. Just to give you a bit of context on the fuel price side, if you look at the current under recovery now in the month of September, month to date, we're looking at, by the time we're going to get our October increase in fuel prices, your diesel price will be up by about 5 Rand per litre over the past 3 months, and your petrol price by about 3 Rand per litre. Now, it's just impossible for any company that's in transport or, in general, have transport as a big proportion of their costs to absorb that type of increase. And we also know that given all our logistical troubles, we've got about 80% of all goods that's transported on road. And, that would mean that it will be inflationary if we see this type of fuel price scenario persisting.
And, of course, among the goods transported by road in this country is food. We're looking at food security today, or food insecurity, many households struggling. And if you go to the food inflation, 8.2%, that was meant to be coming down, but the petrol price, does that mean we have to wait and see with regards to food as well?
Yes, indeed. I think we've been looking out for the food price moderation. It's continued, and that is good news. However, this fuel price scenario could be a spanner in the works in the near term. I'm talking about the next 3 to 6 months, that we maybe have a less pronounced moderation in the food price cycle than what we have hoped for. So from that point of view, it could definitely be a negative for food price as well.
Because of oil prices, let's look at the global picture, because we're not the only country that has struggled with high inflation and is looking at the inflation risks. Do we know when we can start talking about interest rate cuts? Do we know when that will be now?
Francis, I think, if you look at on average, so we're zooming into 1 month data in a couple of months, but if we look at inflation on average for this year, it should be about 6%. And looking forward to 2024, your average headline inflation number should be around 5.1, 5.2%. Partly due to base effects, but also given that some of the pressures will be moderating into next year. And if you then think about the current level of the repo rate at 8.25, and you compare that to, say, a 5.1 average next year, we've got quite a high positive real interest rate in South Africa already, and it will remain like that in the next while. So that's already very restrictive, and it's quite a bit above what the Reserve Bank considered to be the neutral interest rate. So to go back to neutral, which is about 2.3, 2.4%, there is indeed, I would say, fat built into the real rate in the order of about 100 basis points. So hopefully, if we do see inflation, moderate into next year, there will be room for cuts. But I don't think the Reserve Bank will be too much in a hurry, given the current risks. They always point out to us the upside risk to inflation. On the one side is definitely the fuel side. You mentioned the oil price, but also the rand exchange rate has been quite weak in the last month or two, quite a bit weaker than what we expected earlier in this year. I mean, we are looking at about a 10 to 11% depreciation in the rand already so far this year. And that indeed is also inflationary coming from the imported side.